Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Retro Gamers Podcast, episode 175, fool!
Whoa, Josh, be careful.
It's okay. I'm in a confined space right now.
Hold your breath. We're doing a hybrid episode this week.
And a very safe episode as well.
I don't know if it's going to be safe once we kind of get started to talk about this.
That's very true. I just meant safe in the sense of like we're not getting each other sick. As you can see, we've taken precautions. Although Larry's mask isn't exactly helping him.
I think it's doing more worse than it is good now.
I'm dying in this thing, so that's about it. It's
I've been the first to fall.
There was a challenge laid down to me before we started recording, and I plan on living out that challenge this entire episode.
All right. Well, that's fine because I don't have to look at you.
Yeah,
I just have to look at my camera.
It's a dream come true for me. What are you talking about? I get to record in this thing?
Welcome to the podcast where we talk nerd, we talk hope, and we speak nothing else. I'm your host, Captain Nostalgia, and if you guys haven't figured out, we are doing a hybrid episode of Victims and Villains, Retro Gamers this week, and this just kind of seems to be a tradition at this point. Anytime Netflix decides to do a new season of Castlevania. So this season is 10 episodes long. It covers, so we're going to be covering the entirety of the 10 episodes here on Victims and Villains. And if you guys would like to, please go subscribe and see what we're talking about on YouTube for the Retro Gamers. You guys can see how we start this episode out in full-on mask mode. Larry's still going strong.
I am. I'm carrying this all the way out. What are you kidding me? If I'm nothing else, I am a consummate professional and carry out my deeds.
So.
Yeah, professional in quotes, please.
This answers a lifelong question that I've had since I've met you, of what you would look like without eyebrows.
Well, I had them waxed recently, so you almost got close to that.
I think you should just shave them, man. Just embrace the luchador look.
Josh, I'm a little concerned as to why, of all the questions that can pop up in your head about Larry, that was the thing you were wondering.
I often wonder what people look like without eyebrows. Just saying.
I mean, that's true. Everyone, it's one thing. Like Anthony, growing up, Anthony always had glasses on, and the first time I saw him like without glasses, I was like, "Who are you? And what'd you do with my friend?" Oh, but now I'm used to it.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, when I was younger, I had the Clark Kent Superman thing going on, like because my glasses were so oversized for my face when I was a kid that you really had no idea who I was when I took them off.
They kind of were a little big now that I think about it.
Oh no, they were gigantic. They were gigantic. Like when I go back and look at pictures, I'm like, oh okay. I was like, they're bigger than half of my head.
Gosh. Well, you're doing good now with the contacts or the LASIK or new eyeballs, whatever it was.
Yes, and there's nothing safer right now than to, taking my finger and sticking it in and out of my eye.
There you go.
The height of the coronavirus.
As long as you wash your hands and sing happy birthday. No, this is ridiculous. I got to take this off.
Yeah. And professionalism lasts for all the time.
I feel better. All right. I was just getting hot. So.
Just waiting for it to hit the fan. I guess it did not.
All right. And representing the United States proudly. Very good.
Yep. And speaking of, not the United States, but this is just the Retro Gamers Podcast, episode
175.
It is absolutely off the rails.
Yeah, we've already gone completely off the rails here. This is it. I blame Josh.
This happens when we do hybrid episodes, so you guys know what you're looking for.
We have a blast doing these. Castlevania. Holy cow. This was an interesting season. I know we're going to get into it. We're going to get into it in depth. And, Josh did a minor spoiler with us personally in the chat room when we were talking, and he threw it out. He's like, hentai, look out. So I was only in like episode 1. So then I spent the rest of the episodes waiting for it.
Did the tension mount within you? Or you just really?
I'm like, because I'm trying to figure out, all right, where is this going to fit? First of all, in the storyline, and then I mean, they just went from 0 to 60 at that point. We'll get to it, but before that part, Josh definitely let us know a little bit about the episodes. I I enjoyed it, but I do have some opinions about it.
Same. I think that this is a stronger season than season 2, but not as strong as season 1. And it gets to a point where it walks in season 1's strength, but it never reaches it. But it's a definite improvement. But I do think that there are moments like the hentai scene where it's just like unwarranted and unneeded, because when you've been waiting for as long as we have been for the time period between season 2 and season 3, you're only going to have a short period of time to tell these stories. And I liked how they balanced certain things to continue world building and setting for future seasons. But then you also at the same time have to say, okay, well, we have to really take advantage of these characters. And while one of the 2 hentais that is involved in this season actually amounted to something, the other one was kind of like, why did I need this character in the season to even begin with? Because he adds nothing to the larger narrative. Like there's no cohesive nature. He just kind of seems to exist just to say, hey, remember this guy?
Interesting. And I guess I am going to argue of the three of us that this was the strongest season yet, and I enjoyed it thoroughly.
I'm not saying that. Oh, excuse me. Oh,
whoa.
The old COVID. I'm not saying that. I'm sorry. My humor. I apologize.
Remember this is a hybrid.
I know. I'm sorry. I don't even do those jokes on our own podcast.
That's very true.
But I enjoyed the season, and I think, Josh, to your credit, to your point, I should say, I don't think you're saying that you hated the season. You still enjoyed the season, just it probably wasn't the best of the 3. I find it interesting you find the first season, which was 4 episodes, the strongest. I may want to come back and revisit that part. But yeah, the hentai, which for those of you who may not know, and I'll do this delicately, hentai is just like adult anime. So, speaking of adult anime, look who just showed up.
Adult anime.
So, there you go. So, going into, even from season 1 of Castlevania, we knew this was going to be, this wasn't a kid's cartoon. Yeah. I mean, the blood, the violence, which is fine. It doesn't bother me. It's all warranted. But, if you want to talk about it now, yeah, those 2 scenes, one I felt was needed, and yeah, the other one I felt was out of place.
That's the biggest problem that I had with that, and the character that's involved with it very much feels out of place throughout the entirety of this season. Like almost all the characters involved in that season or that scene become just very much out of place. And the fact that they have it littered and spliced together throughout the entire episode, like it's not just a one and done scene, but they are scenes that they are continually, you have the main storyline, you have one hentai, and then you have another, and they're littered together throughout the course of it, and it's supposed to be this cohesive narrative. And I'm like, why do I need to keep coming back to this? Because every time they would show it, it would just take me out of what was the happening with the main plot with Cypher and Belmont.
Real quick, I just want to mention, I know we're dancing around it. We're going to talk about it in a moment, but I feel like, Josh, the one scene you thought was out of place, I feel the other scene was the one out of place. Before, and I know we're being very vague. Yeah, let's kind of
hold on 1 second. Since we're talking about the actual scenes, I think, and I think we're jumping a little bit too far since we're going all the way to episode 9. But just to point it out really quickly for people who are listening or watching. We're talking episode 9, and we're talking about one of the scenes is Alucard with Taka and Sumi, and the other scene is with Lenore and Hector. Is that correct? Yes, this is what we're talking about. Okay. So
there was a one-on-one and then a triple threat.
Right, exactly. Yeah. So those are the 2 scenes we're talking about, and one of you is arguing, apparently, that the Alucard one was out of place. The other one's arguing that the Lenore one was out of place.
I think... Hold on, Josh.
So let's Yes, so let's do this. So here on Victims and Villains, we're going to take a quick commercial break. You guys, but if you or someone you know is struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, you guys can reach out to us on any of our social media. You can call the Suicide Lifeline at 1-800-273-8255. You can text HELP to 741-741 or go to victimsandvillains.net/hope. You guys can get even more resources past the ones that I've just mentioned. And I'm sure that anyone who is currently listening to this on the Retro Gamers feed, you guys can also get all of those resources wherever you guys are currently listening to this, as well as if you guys are listening to this on the Victims and Villains feed, you guys can, wherever you guys are currently listening to this, all those links are going to be in the show notes for this episode. Please, suicide is currently the 10th leading cause of death in the United States. There are 130 plus suicides that take place each and every day. And when you scale back internationally, there are 800,000 successful suicides. That is one death roughly every 40 seconds. So please, if you or someone you know is struggling, you guys can reach out to us on any of our social media. Once again, the reason we create this content, as much as we love talking about video games and anime, it is so that you guys can know that you have value and worth. This is the real reason. This is the heartbeat and the bedrock of our everyday content. Please stay with us. We'll be right back. All right, welcome back to Victims and Villains and
the Retro Gamers Luchador Podcast.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't agree to that title.
Hey, you know what would make this even better? The Luchador Singing Podcast.
No. That makes nothing better.
And this is now your official spoiler warning.
Yes, that is true. I kind of forgot about the spoiler, and Anthony's gone. All righty. Oh, Josh, this is something I've been trying to do for 2.5 years. Good Lord. Wow. Finally got the episode to myself. Oh, there he is. Never mind. He's almost back. He's coming back into frame. There he is.
But does he bring cats with him?
It's very easy to get rid of me. Just start singing. So Castlevania, people.
Just wait another couple of weeks, and I ordered something that's going to make you bat crazy.
Oh, yeah. So Castlevania?
Yes, go for it. Let's go back to Castlevania, because also a little later in this episode, we are going to talk about the games, because I got some stuff to talk about with Castlevania. But again, we're talking about the Netflix episode, shows, and yeah, so where we left off is we're just going right into episode 9.
Well, let's jump into the like where we find these characters in the beginning.
Let's rewind. We'll get to the controversy of episode 9 later on. But yeah, Josh, give us a recap. Where do we find our characters?
So Alucard is he's now in a defunct mansion of his father.
Defunct.
Yes.
He no longer travels anymore, and he's just kind of hanging out with the Belmont legacy by his side, and just kind of enjoying, the post snap Thanos life, just hanging out, just being a farmer.
I wouldn't say enjoying per se.
Yeah, because he does definitely explore some themes of like depression and isolation very early on in the series, which I thought was kind of a interesting place to find him as a character, to where he had such a anger and such a wrath towards his father throughout the second season, to where he, all he wanted to do was kind of kill him. And then they had that very tender aside towards the end of the second season, and Dracula does end up dying. And it's kind of one of those things that we talked about this recently here we did an event, and we talked about just the mental health capacity that something like revenge or anger or bitterness, how it holds and how it takes its toll on your mental health, and how it doesn't bring satisfaction. That's ultimately where you find Alucard at the beginning, where he had been chasing this thing for so long, and ultimately once he had gotten it, there was no satisfaction.
Yeah, I agree with that, and I think it's actually a very poignant story for him, because you're dealing with somebody now, to your point, in the aftermath of revenge, realizing that not only is it not all it's cracked up to be, but we're also seeing the result of this. I would almost call it a self-imposed isolation in a way, not to juxtapose it to what's going on in the real world right now, but it's actually an interesting It's actually an interesting way of looking at it, because not only has he kind of imposed this bit of isolation, but at the same time he's dealing with the rack of guilt. Like, he's literally guilty about the fact that, he murdered his father, and you're seeing how he's punishing himself. I mean, to the point of where he becomes so lonely and so disconnected that he's desperate and like yearning for some type of connection to the real world again, even though he is subconsciously punishing himself for what he did.
And it was, this scene as well, the first scene with Alucard, in the next door to the castle and everything. This is where, to me, the season kind of, like, the tone for the season, like, that's where I got it from. So I'm like, all right, so everyone's dealing with the aftermath. Alucard, killed his father. We're gonna see, where all the other characters are gonna be at this point. And what I didn't realize till a little bit later on is kind of the subtle, what I'll call humor, which the show always kind of had a little bit with Trevor Belmont. Like, he just his kind of no care attitude. But we have this scene of Alucard eating a meal, talking to Cypher and Trevor, but they're dolls that he created. But like, he did it kind of in a way, like his voice was like a little higher pitched, and I'm like, that wouldn't to me sound like Alucard. Like, he's almost having a little too much fun with this. And I got to admit, some of the what I'll call humor took me out of the season a little bit, and this was one of the first ones that did it. I'm not saying I was ready to turn the show off, but I was like, oh, it's just kind of an odd way to introduce all this. And then we move forward, especially with the twins that he meets later on.
Well, I mean, let me ask you this. Like, have you ever been isolated in your home for a snowstorm?
I do a podcast about video games. Of course, I'm always isolated in my house. Yeah. Like, old joking aside, this weekend that we're recording, I probably would have stayed in anyway. But, with everything that's going on in the real world, like Anthony said, isolation's more of a thing now, but I've definitely spent my time inside. I
guess it depends on really what kind of personality you are, because like, I've had snow days where like I am like, it's so bad up here in Pennsylvania where we get snow and it'll just shut down like traffic and roads and businesses because it's too dangerous, and I end up losing my mind by like hour 6. And so I end up taking the Alucard way of making voodoo dolls and doing impersonations.
Oh, is that why my back hurts sometimes and I can't figure it out?
I'm sorry.
The real quick, the closest thing I can equate to that, for me, being on Long Island, is Hurricane Sandy. Because Hurricane Sandy knocked out the power here on Long Island for 5 days. I mean, my parents, I spent a week with them. They were without power and heat for almost a month. So I totally understand, like, all joking aside, I do get that isolation, because here I am in my apartment, and I lived in a basement apartment. So forget about the mornings. I had no sun, because I live in a basement, and I'm just sitting there, literally just sitting there in the dark. It is a weird feeling.
Yeah. And just to relate, I think in general, at least moments of isolation for me, I'm a very short-tempered person when it comes to doing things. So I can't sit still. So for me, So for me, like, even being like stuck for like 6 hours drives me crazy, let alone days. Yesterday, now that, in the real world, they're saying social distancing, do some self-isolation. I was sitting in my house yesterday and just like texting a friend complaining. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so bored. I don't know what else to do. And he's like, dude, it's day 1. I'm like, yeah.
Barely.
I was like, and you can say that Alucard's dolls of Trevor and Cypher are kind of like my cats, because I talk to my cats. I talk to my cats all the time. But yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like it tests basically your mental capacity and basically your mental strength. And after a while, depending on how long you have to be isolated, it gets to you because you're craving that interaction that, some type of interaction that's literally right outside your door, but for some reason you can't have it. And in Alucard's case, he technically could. If he wanted to, he could go out into the world. And that's the difference there in a sense, because he has chosen this type of isolation. And as a result of it, he's chosen to essentially start going mad.
Where I agree with you, and there's like two types of people in this world. There's an Alucard when it comes to isolation, and then there's Trevor Belmont when it comes to isolation. Because I feel like Trevor, albeit he's with Cypher now, I think before her, he had no problem. He wanted to be alone. Like I think he preferred that, and I feel like I'm a Trevor.
He had different, like, he had a legacy about his name, and
that he wasn't crazy about. Well, he was fine living up to it, but it took a toll on him mentally. Where I feel he could have, like, going into season 1, like if you can think of the backstory, which is the video game. I think Trevor probably wants to be on his own.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's when we first initially meet him, and I think that the reason why we initially met him that way is, to your point, it's like it's the weight of the legacy that's on him, and even though he's up for the task, it doesn't mean that he necessarily enjoys the fact that he's doing this. I think he's good at it, and he knows he's good at it, and all of that, but it just takes a toll on you, and you get to that point where it's like, you know what, I've seen enough horrors in the world, and I've inflicted enough horror in the world that I'm kind of perfectly fine just being removed from it.
Okay, I agree with you on that.
Yeah, whereas Larry, you don't want to be removed from the world. You just do it often.
I do, and I don't have a problem with it. I'm not saying. I'm just saying. It's not like come knock my door down. I'm just like,
right.
That's how I am.
But then you also see now, when you're looking at season 3, now we're well beyond the whole idea of Trevor being alone. You see what Sypha has brought out in him, obviously, not only as a companion, but as pretty much. I don't want to say, it's interesting because I don't want to say, even though they're kind of shacking up together, I don't want to say that they're a couple. You know what I mean? It's almost like they're companions with benefits. That's how I see them. I don't see them as like a couple. I don't know did you get a sense that they were like together or just?
Josh, what's your thoughts? I felt like they were like dating.
Yeah, you could definitely feel that they were dating because there are several scenes littered throughout the episodes where they'll wake up in bed next to each other, or they're cuddling, or there seems to be a closer bond and a closer intimacy within them. And that, to me, was one of the strongest points of this season, in all honesty, because I felt like I stood back, and as I was thinking about each character's arc throughout the course, obviously we've spent the most time with Trevor Belmont, and to kind of see where we find him at the end of the pilot to where we get him throughout the end of this 3rd season and its duration, he feels like a well-rounded character. Like, you could see recently we did an event and we were talking about the importance of community and how we're biologically created to be around other people. Like, there's something within us that we just need to have around other people. And one of the things that makes that so is the fact that, we are the fact that we need community for the sake of our own mental health. And I think that's a super important thing that they get to explore. And it kind of almost seems like when he's around Cypher, like, you can definitely see that he's been missing that for the entirety of what we've seen him as a character. And so it felt more rounded to his character. It added new dynamics, and the two of them just had really great chemistry. And it was something that I did not know that I needed until I actually stepped into the season. I loved and adored the relationships throughout the season between the two of them.
They definitely brought a light pun intended, I guess. They brought a light to the season that was majority full of this darkness, and which it's Castlevania, and it's you're right, it's a complete, if I may steal a title from another podcast, a yin and yang between Alucard, who's just so dark as far as his isolation, versus Trevor and Cypher, who are in this town now, almost trying to live with the townspeople, live like townspeople.
Which is, I didn't.
No.
Sorry.
No, I was gonna say I thought that you make a really good point, and it also shows you how much Trevor has changed since we first met him, and how like you sense not only the not necessarily the light between them, but the strength between the two of them, and how now they complement each other. But just them coming into town and the overall heroicism between the two of them, and how they now share it with each other.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
It's funny that you talk about the themes being a little bit darker in this season, but there are certain sequences as you get later on into it, and a lot of I'm not sure if you've seen any of the marketing for like the one-shot posters of this, but it's definitely a brighter color palette than previous seasons. I love and absolutely adore the banner that they released. It kind of almost has like this floral feel to it that I just think is like, when I saw it, I hadn't seen any trailers for Castlevania. I was like, I'm sold on this. And I think that once you kind of get deeper into it and you kind of introduce what was the thing underneath of it called the Eternal what?
Oh, the Eternal Corridor?
Yeah, the Eternal Corridor. Yeah. Once you kind of introduce that into it, it kind of really opens
infinite.
Up
the infinite.
That's what infinite corridor. Sorry. Which is really, actually a real thing.
You really start to open up the doors to like more of a color palette, and that I really think complemented the darker nature of the season really well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think let's just stick to the Trevor story, since we essentially had four basic storylines here out of all of this, and sticking with the Trevor one, the whole they were the ones that really brought anything kind of light into it with the whole magics in the infinite corridor. And then we also got to meet a new character, Count Saint Germain, who I was really I found him very interesting, and I really liked the direction they went with him. The scholar who's coming in looking, well, obviously he's looking for somebody, and you'll know very clearly they never tell you exactly who he's looking for.
Yeah,
which I thought was interesting, because I'm assuming we'll find that out in season 4. Because I was sitting there saying, was it his wife, girlfriend, daughter? Like, who was it that he was looking for? We never really got the answer to that.
I kind of thought he was looking for Dracula.
No, he was looking for, if I remember correctly, I think
somebody else.
Looking for his wife, because his wife had gotten stuck in the infinite corridor.
Oh, yes. Because, okay, I got you. By the way, the infinite corridor actually exists at MIT.
Oh. Nice. Yeah. See, now I must have missed the part where he said it was his wife that got stuck. I know he said he was looking for somebody. I just didn't. I didn't remember him saying it was his wife.
It is the scene where him, Trevor, and Cypher
at the bar
go to the bar.
Oh, okay. So
he kind of like explains and does a lot of exposition for his character there.
Yep. I just forgot that part. But I think but what I really enjoyed was that I really enjoyed the story that he was in, and the involvement, and how he was our main drive into the Priory, while Trevor and Cypher were trying to figure out what was going on in the town with the judge, who was also a very interesting character, I thought.
I liked the judge. He brought, like, well, I mean, I liked him in the beginning. The judge looked like was going to be a character. Like, in this series, everyone, I assume that Trevor and Cypher were going to interact with, we're going to try and kill them in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. And the judge comes off as, he's in charge of, what's the name of the town again? Does anyone remember?
Lingrenfeld?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, Lindenfeld.
And so he's in charge of Lindenfeld, and like he's trying to keep peace between the regular town folk and the
Priory.
Yeah, the Priory up on top of the hill or whatever. And at first I thought he was maybe part of that, but as the episodes go on until, episode 9 or 10, I'm like, all right, this guy's not so bad. He wants good in the neighborhood. Yeah, honestly.
That
Until
ending though.
that ending, that was creepy. Which I liked because that was like, whoa, this guy had an issue with nothing to do with the Priory, nothing to do with Trevor or Cypher being there. He was just on his own nutty. And the part that clicked for me with that was later on, like episode 5 or 6, when the boy was running through town wanting an apple, and he gives this detailed explanation how to get to like the judge's private apple tree. And even with that, I'm like, that's kind of detailed. That's a little weird. And then when he started explaining that again, I forget who he explained it to. He explained it to somebody else.
He explained it to the lead guy in the Priory. I can't remember.
Oh, that's right. Yes. And then I'm like, oh, wait a minute, there's something even worse than that. And then when he came out of the room sweating in his house, I'm like, this guy, oh, there is something with this guy. And again, I thought it was with the Priory, and then they cut to like the last, I think it was in episode 10.
Yeah.
When they finally get into the house, and he's got a collection of kids' shoes. And I'm like, no way. That is messed up. And yeah.
Well, and it's just a testament to I think the character development that they're doing in this series, which I really think is with their strong suit. Like the character development to me in this is excellent, and seeing a character that you're following throughout the entire season, where you're at first you're not sure about him, and then you kind of figure out it's like, oh no, he's on Trevor and Cypher's side, so we can trust him, and he's great. But then you look, and then obviously you peel back the curtain, and it's like just because. And again, it teaches you just because somebody has good intentions in one way does not mean that they're generally overall a good person overall. He clearly had a dark side. We learned about it right at the end. And when we say dark, like it doesn't really get much darker than what he was doing.
Yeah.
I mean, it kind of almost feels like it's their version of like John Wayne Gacy, to where you have a guy that's very lovable, but then, it throws you for a twist and you find out, oh, hey, no, he's got a dark side. His dark side includes killing children. Yeah. Like you said, like you don't get much worse than that. And that was one of the seasons that I was I was watching the end of this season with my wife, and I had been up watching I binged it all at one time. My wife had kind of come in right around episode 7 or 8, and I was getting ready to drink coffee when that scene happened, and I like took my coffee down. I was like, what? Are you serious? Oh my goodness. Like it really caught me by surprise to kind of see where his character ended up. It's kind of it's very, very well done with the development.
Yeah, and also what was interesting too is that while obviously this is loaded with spoiler alerts, that while he was dying in the last episode, that obviously that need for confession at the end, he had to confess before he died. He had to confess it to somebody, which is why he obviously told it to Trevor and Cypher, because he trusted, I think, that they would figure it out, because he had already sent the other guy. What was his name? Like Sumu or Sunu? Like it was some weird name. But the lead of the Priory, he already sent him out there to his death. So he already knew. It's like by the time Trevor and Cypher got there, they would have found it.
See, I took it. All right, I didn't take it that part of him confessing, because he was like, burn my house, like just burn the house down, which in the beginning, I don't remember, if it made it on here or not when we started recording, talk about, hey, clear your browser history, always, joke about that, if I die, please clear my browser history. Like, you don't want to tell him why, just do it. So I took that as him just really actually hiding it till the bitter end. And it was the two of them kind of like, oh, what's behind door number 1? It's like, oh, it's Nike Kids. That's not cool. It's not cool at all. So, which is even more weird when he comes out of the room sweating.
Well, I guess it's an interesting argument at that point then, because did you think then when he was sending them to the apple tree that he was trying to send them to their death?
The kids?
Possibly, because you have to
No,
also.
Trevor and Sypha.
Yeah, I
Oh.
know. But possibly because you have to think that as they're kind of showing the museum of shoes that he's kind of garnered, it looks almost like that he doesn't have like one exclusivity when it comes to murdering. Like it's not just like I'm a kid killer. It's got to be between ages 5 and 8. Like it's got to be exclusive boys. They can't be above this level. Like it looks like he just he did it for the absolute sheer thrill of killing.
Didn't he send them to the apple tree first? Because Sypha was like, "Look, there's bones. Why do they look small?" And
Yes.
then they made it to the house.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah, I think you're right. I think he was trying to kill him.
Yeah. Well, he didn't instruct them either way which one to do first. So I mean, the argument could be like if he was trying to send them to their death and they went there first, his house wouldn't have been burnt down. If they went to the house first, and found everything, you know what I mean? It's like it's a weird mix. That's why I kind of went along the ways of they would have been able to piece it together, which is why I felt like it was partly a confession, and maybe it was to burn my house down, not necessarily to hide it, but just like for the shame that he felt for what he did. I think he realized, this is my interpretation, I think he realized they were gonna figure it out.
Okay.
But if you have a problem with it and when you're alive, I feel like it's a cop out to have shame in death. Like if you just live your life free of regrets, to quote Watchmen, then when you die, it's a good, peaceful, earned death.
Well, I think when you
as
I say, I think when you talk about something sinister in this nature and everything like that, I think for the most part, and again, I don't know because I've never done anything that sinister yet. But I think that well, that's sinister right there.
Marge Simpson is the worst of all.
Yes, she is. But I think that when you're, let's say, when you're dying, a lot of people say this, like, when you're at the end of your life, a lot of people say, you have a lot of regrets. Like, I regret that I did this and stuff. You want to live, to your point, a life without regret. This, to me, was probably his greatest regret, even though he felt a need to do this in life. Now, at the end of his life, he's realizing the mistake that he had made in this and the regret that he had for it, which would have prompted some type of confession.
Now, also, with the religious aspect of the show, which really haven't touched on too much yet, with him, it's also, when you're on your dying bed and you're taking your dying breath, you can basically almost, absolve yourself of all your sins, at the very last moment. So you can head up to God. And if you want to look at it that way, that's his way of repenting for all that, clearing his conscience, clearing all of his sins. And then he goes, no, for real, because in this situation, he may have seen hell with the priory. They witnessed the demons coming down, which leads to the priory, and the abundance of what I felt was completely unnecessary fecal jokes, for both the priory and because we haven't even touched on Hector in the dungeon and everything yet.
Oh, we're getting there.
The vampires. No, I know, but I'm just saying, I think with him, and then we can move on with that. I think it's just him, kind of his last breath, like, all right, let me clear my conscience. And because technically speaking, if you want to bring the religious aspect into it, technically there's nobody in hell. That's what they say. So he's probably just wanted to make sure he doesn't end up there.
Right, but in the world of Castlevania that we're watching, we know for a fact that there are people.
Oh yeah. Demons and everything. Yeah.
Right. So in this world, and this could have been his way of trying to not go there, because maybe he thinks he did something altruistic by trying to save the town, which, by the way, he utterly failed to.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? It was just, again, it's just that last confession. It's like, I'm dying. It's like, I have to say this, or whatever it may be.
So with hell, to Anthony's point, there is a very amazing and cryptic scene that I think all of us kind of knew we were holding our breath for throughout the course of the season. I think with the way that season 2 ended, we kind of we had an idea of what season 3 was going to be. and that of course was the resurrection of Dracula, and they teased it in once they get into hell. I think it's like the 7th or 8th episode, they give you a little glimpse into hell, and you see Dracula and his wife.
Yeah.
And I was so grumpy that they did not do anything with that.
Yeah.
I was like,
I was very happy they didn't do anything with
well
it.
played. I am too, but I'm also at the same time, I'm like, all right, you have my attention for season 4. Well played.
And that's exactly what it was, because I felt like if they went right back to it, that was what everybody expected. Like by the end of this season, Dracula's going to be back, and then he'll be season 4. I love the fact that they didn't do it, but at the same time, because Count Saint Germain wound up in the Infinite Corridor, I think that was enough of a tease of something's going to play out in the Infinite Corridor that's going to obviously with Count Saint Germain that's going to lead to Dracula coming back.
I was waiting for Dracula. I'm like, bring me Dracula. You know, it's Trevor Belmont. He's got to fight somebody. Fight Dracula.
But after watching the whole season, did you need it?
No.
Yes.
And I didn't. I didn't.
I didn't either.
But
here's the two of you nuts with movies.
Here's what I expected coming into the 3rd season. Dracula is going to be dead maybe towards the end of the season. They are going to set him up to be season 4 big bad. They're going to do something that's going to resurrect him. But I was expecting a World War face-off, very similar to like DC's Flashpoint between Carmella and Isaac. Like that was kind of the two that I was expecting to really go, and they diverted my attention, but they gave me enough of those characters that not only did they world build for future seasons, but honestly, Isaac probably was one of my favorite characters throughout the course of the season, just the journey that he got to go on, and they really fleshed his character out, whereas I felt like in season 2, he just kind of seemed to exist against noise. But here you definitely got to really utilize him and make him a stronger character moving forward into seasons 4 and onward.
One of my favorite scenes, besides the hentai, one of my favorite scenes in the show was Isaac in that town when all the people were possessed, if you will. And then they just formed this giant ball of people. Yes. And the visual, I thought, was just phenomenal. I really quite enjoyed that. And Josh, if I may get your opinion on this, you know, the symbols that were on their heads and everything was very reminiscent of like the crown of thorns, and you know, was this like a Christian group, you know, just trying to fight this evil that ended up coming into town. And then, you know, when the lead guy, whatever his name was, the king was killed, and then just you see the bodies just you know, let the bodies hit the floor. You know, it was it was such. I'm trying to be serious. Look at me, okay? Yeah. I'm trying to be serious here right now. Yeah, that whole scene, that whole visual, the animation, everything to me was perfect in that scene. Even with Isaac just making his way up there, running up, you know, just trying to get to this. Almost felt like a level. It felt like a video game level.
Yes, it did.
Yeah, to your point, I think that it is Christian symbology. I don't know really too much of what it could be interpreted to either say or mean, but to me, I think that if you're going to have a world where you have let's say a like satanic or atheistic approach to magic, I think you need that just as well for like a god version, because you know, where there's a devil there has to be a god, where there's bad there has to be good, where there's a villain there has to be a hero kind of mentality. And to that point, I think that that's kind of what we started to see throughout the course of that particular scene.
And if you don't mind, I just want to ask Josh one more quick question, because I want to get, when I was watching this, I thought of Josh, all joking aside, you know, with your faith that you express every week, every time on your show, how did you feel, if I may ask, and if you want to answer the question, that's okay, the scenes in the church, like with the upside down crucifix and, how a lot of that was being played out. Like, did you feel did you feel like, this show's getting a little weird now?
So I mean, it's no weirder than in earlier seasons where churches are literally being burned down.
Okay.
Right. So for one of the things that fascinates me personally is psychology, and personally how people believe what they believe, or why people are caught up in the religion or worship the gods that they do. I'm fascinated by cults, and that to me just kind of seemed like very much like a cult.
Okay.
The way that they approach that, and Sala, who is the main guy, he just kind of seemed very very atypical of what you would expect from a cult leader, to where he is kind of an extremist. So to me, obviously, a lot of what you'll find in cults are people will take a passage from the Bible and they will basically twist it to their own needs, and that is the foundation for which they will build off their religion or their cult at that point. And there have been several cults all around the world that have taken portions of scripture that they have read to interpret, oh, this must mean this, and that's how they started to have the occult. And that's what you definitely start to see with Sala, is he's taking this gift from God, as he calls it, and he's crucifying it down in the basement. And clearly it's a monster, demon, whatever you want to call it.
Night creature.
Yeah. That has fallen from the sky. And, he's kind of done his bidding. He feels very much like an occult leader. So I'm at a point where I'm able to having done a lot of research into the occult mindset and mentality, it's really easy for me to decipher Christianity and the many offshoots in the occultic lifestyle.
Okay.
Yeah. Plus, you're also dealing with a topic that doesn't generally get covered in entertainment and television and film as much, but just the darker side of religious history. Many things in the history of our world have been done in the name of religion. Many heinous things. So and Castlevania is a series that's rife with that, and obviously it's a key element of the whole story. So it's interesting to see the different ways that they've represented that. So, and in this season, obviously we're seeing that with the Priory and how everything gets twisted to to this darker side of things, where all of a sudden these monks are followers of Dracula, and they're basically crucifying this night creature at his request. It was obviously it was a means to an end there. But I wanted to circle back to Isaac's story, because we really just started to touch on it, and to Josh's point, I loved the character development with him, because we didn't know him in season 2, and the entire story behind his journey was he was questioning why Dracula saved him. Dracula clearly saved him for a purpose, and his first intention in terms of that is similar to what we saw Alucard go through in season 2. Isaac is set up on revenge. He wants revenge on Carmela for what happened to Dracula. That is his goal, to take out Carmela. So we're seeing a new story here, but with an old trope that we saw in the last season. And then throughout his journey, we start to learn a lot more about him and his intentions, and how even when he's traveling through as a Forge Master, he's not looking for a fight throughout the whole show. Throughout the whole season, he's every time he comes to, he's like, I'm not interested in fighting. We just need to pass through, because I have my purpose. I know where I'm going. And you just see how everybody's reaction to him, and obviously the night creatures, are what doom them in a way. So, and that, I thought that was an interesting take on things, because here you go. You see like the quote unquote one of the villains of the show who's actually he's just trying to, he's just trying to get his sole purpose. And then the people that we're supposed to be feeling, that we're supposed to be feeling good about, actually have twisted it because they're blinded by what they see. And they immediately are like, no, you know what? You guys can't pass. Get the hell out of here, or we're going to kill you because we know you're evil.
Yeah. And if I can piggyback off that, I think he has some of the best asides too throughout the course of this season, where whether he is talking to the elderly woman, the elderly mage, I think she was in the rocking chair right before that big sequence we were just talking about, but possibly, and I put this down in my notes because I really wanted to talk about this scene, and I think this is a hybrid episode, and our podcast talks about mental health a lot. This was probably one of my favorite scenes in this. There's a scene in the third episode where Isaac is having a dinner with the captain of the ship that he is on, and Isaac is telling the captain his story and his purpose for this journey in rescuing Hector, to which the captain shows to which he shows the captain the mirror that he has received from a shop owner as a gift. That simple act of kindness quickly got pushed to the way by the prejudiced nature of the town people, to which Isaac detests how he hates humans. The captain responds, "If you kill human evilness, surely you wipe out the human kindness in the same regard." And that again kind of just goes back to the mental health aspect of, really understanding where even if you're meeting someone at like evil, there's also a capacity for someone to be kind, and we all have the capacity to be greatly evil. I mean, our history, like you said, Ant, is littered with some dark religious crusades, but it's filled with serial killers and rapists and child murderers, all in the same. But it's also, then you have people like Mr. Rogers and
Mother
Teresa, people that are going over and saving their lives. I mean, I wouldn't put you in that category.
No, that's not good. Well,
rude.
Yeah, I think we just jumped the shark.
Rude. But you're right.
But it begs the question, do we focus so much on the negative that we fail to see the positive, no matter how small it is?
I think that always happens.
Yes.
Now, everyone's all focused on negative, but, there is positive in what's going on in the world today. But that goes with everything. But yeah, it is. You have to have, it's that whole yin yang, dark light, good, bad. One cannot survive without the other. That's really what it boils down to.
Yeah, and I think what's also a way to look at it is that should the world ever succumb to one side or the other, eventually the other side will return, because to your point, you can't have one without the other. So no matter how dark things get, there will always be the light side of it. Even if you think it's gone, it's still there. It's just biding its time to surge back up again. And Isaac learned, on that ship, Isaac learned, a very valuable lesson from the captain, which I think also altered his course throughout, where he wasn't just on a crusade to murder people along the way. And I think we learned that very specifically in the town with the king and all of the slaves, basically, that were under mind control, because his purpose to go there was basically, I'm going to build my army, right? That was his goal. He's like, there are plenty of people there. I'm going to forge night creatures. But then he decided, even when he got there, he said, just let the bodies fall. Instead of turning everybody, he chose to kill the king and let everybody die. Because remember, he said they had to be either wounded, or we saw that in the previous town.
Yeah.
They had to be wounded for him to turn them into night creatures. But when he got to this town, he realized that, he took a different path. He's like, I'm not gonna turn these people. Maybe it was a sense of compassion of they already suffered enough under what happened to them, or it was just whatever the purpose was. Kills the king, lets everybody die, doesn't turn them.
He also was very specific. He said, kill the townspeople, just get rid of them. Don't burn the village.
Yeah.
Because he's probably waiting for new crops to come in.
Well, that's entirely possible. But I think once the mind control, once you kill the king, the mind control is over. So anybody else who would have been controlling would be gone. So unless he's waiting for people to come and take over the town, because they're like, oh, this town is empty. But it was just I just really enjoyed his journey overall on the show. And I will say, my favorite scene in this season was from his story, but it was one of the asides, like you were talking about, Josh. It was at the end of episode 6, The Good Dream, when he pulled the night creature with kind of the fly face with the eyes.
Yep.
When he pulled him out to sit down and talk to him, and the speech that night creature gave about who he was when he was alive, and the whole story that he tells right there, to me was so amazing. And the delivery and the message, all of it to me was just I don't know what it was. Like it was the only scene that actually gave me chills. I got like goosebumps just listening to it. And I urge anybody to just go back and really sit and focus on that aside. It just, to me, like that story had so much meaning behind it in terms of the views of not only this world, but the way that you can view people in our world and why they do the bad things that they do. So I urge you to go back and check that out.
Yeah, I really appreciate that sequence as well. And, like you're saying, like it really kind of brings clarity to why we might do some of the more heinous acts that we do as humanity. And, when it boils down to it, like we all are the same essentially to one capacity or another. And we all feel fear. We all feel joy. We all feel anxiety. We all feel sadness or depression or, just happiness and sympathy. Like we all go through those emotions, and to kind of understand, what brings a person to do something like murder or rape. They're fascinating stories to me, and I'm not trying to excuse something like murder or rape, but it really helps you to kind of see a little bit better where that person's kind of coming from, and how that person is 9 times out of 10 just repeating a cycle that they themselves were in at one point or another.
Yeah, and that is unfortunate that that's something that winds up happening, but again, it's and I don't know if it's it's probably more scientific in terms of the way that our brains work and the way that, when things are ingrained in us at certain points in our lives, how they manage to stick in there. And even though we don't necessarily, it's the thing of like, I'll never ever do that because I've been through that. And then in a lot of cases, it's kind of like your brain is trained to even go in that direction, despite the fact that you don't want to.
All right. And with that noise, we are back. We're going to take just a quick break here on the Retro Gamers from Castlevania to talk about a couple of things that we have happened. We still have Josh with us here with the Retro Gamers. So this is an exclusive that we got with Josh.
Yeah, it's very special. And may I say, it's probably one of the better exclusives we got with Josh, because the other exclusives Josh has shared with us have been a little TMI.
Thank the good Lord they were not recording.
Larry gave me credit on that one. So
I did. Listen, you give credit where credit is due. Sometimes you just have to deal with the consequences. That's all.
That's very true.
Brandon, you're up next. So basically, what I want to talk about first real quick, and I did a quick video on this because, which you can see on our Facebook page and on our YouTube page. I did this Indiegogo and of game cases. And basically what it is this company, customgamecases.com, makes these custom game cases for basically almost everything that's not a CD-based system and not the Switch. Mm-hmm. They make, and I'm just going to show it right here because Anthony's not going to be happy about this.
Ew,
The
boo.
Indiegogo was for Virtual Boy cases. And I gotta say, I mean, yes, this is Virtual Boy, but now to get your thoughts on this thing, because
Yeah.
these are high quality.
No. They're beautiful cases. They're very well made. You can tell, that with the hard plastic, the cover. Now, I guess my question is, yeah, even the inside, like everything about that looks fantastic. The cover is a recreation. Is it an exact recreation of the original?
Yeah. So I didn't realize this when you go on their website. Yes, you get the case and the label.
Yeah. And the label is the same label of the game
Yes.
when it came out. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. For that alone, for that attention to detail, yes, it's fantastic. Do I regret the fact that you bought Virtual Boy ones? Absolutely. And so should you. But yeah, no. And I went on their website after I saw your video on Friday.
Okay.
On their website,
Yeah.
and I love the fact that they do Super Nintendo, I believe. They do Sega Genesis. So they have different systems that you can buy cases for. So I'm definitely all in for that.
So they
really cool stuff.
Also, too, have N64, which is really awesome. The way that the N64 cases look really awesome. They have.
And to be honest with you, those are probably the ones I would buy because N64 games, when you put them on a shelf, you can't see what they are.
Yes. Also, too, the Game Boy collections that they have are fairly pretty sweet too. Looking at this one right now, like they look. And I think one of the things that I like most about the cases, they look and handle a lot like Sega Genesis. And Genesis, the way that they have them, you open them up, they're nice and thick. They have a nice spine to them. They have beautiful visuals, and you can also open them up.
This is not from the website. This is from the original.
See, hey, is that Subterranea?
Yep.
I own that game.
There you go.
Nice.
But yeah.
So yeah.
They're very nice cases.
Yeah, so I think the N64 route would be the way that I would go because again, like with all my games on my shelves, I can never read what N64 games I have. I have to pull them out every time.
And here's what I like about them as well. And you're right, like the Genesis ones, they just look like the Genesis ones.
Yep.
Yeah.
So if you even need a replacement, they're not expensive at all, and you can get them in either black or red. Game Gear, you can get like 3 different types of covers. So you can get Game Gears that look like the Genesis ones, just a little smaller.
Sweet.
And like Josh said, you can get N64, which to Anthony's point makes sense with the spine and everything. Mm-hmm. Like I have 1, 2, 3, 4. I have 6 Genesis games right now that are out of box. I bought them loose.
Yep.
Honestly, I think they're $5 each per box. They have all 6 of these games.
Perfect. So
and
I can just get them.
Right in. I can throw them right in, and they look original. I did email them though, see maybe if they start making ones for the EA Genesis games.
Oh yeah,
a little larger. But yeah, check them out. CustomGameCases.com. Definitely check them out because if you're looking for cases, they even sell blank cases. If you just need another case made, I think they're not 3D printed. I think they're actually like, what do they call that? Like pressed or whatever you want to call them, like plastic or whatever.
Okay.
So definitely high quality. Definitely check them out. Again, CustomGameCases.com.
They're definitely on my shopping list. That was a good buy.
Yep.
That's a good buy, Larry. Even if it was Virtual Boy.
Same. Now I need to, because I have probably like 4 or 5 loose Sega games that I need cases for. So now I know that I can go ahead and do those fairly cheap. Boom.
Yep. And I think even at a certain price, real quick, then Anthony will go. I think at a certain price, they may even do free shipping or something like that. So.
That's cool. Is that all you bought this week?
From what I remember, yes.
Okay. Well, I bought one thing this week that I wanted to share.
Technically, I bought those like 8 months ago.
Well, yeah, but they just came. Well, and then I'm gonna share what I bought this week because it was definitely a busy shopping week for me. And I would love to say that I bought a ton of video game stuff, but I didn't. But I just want to share what I did buy this week.
Oh, there we go.
See?
Yeah.
Because for some odd reason, everybody has gone crazy and has bought all the toilet paper in the land.
That's better than a video game right now.
No, I'm telling you, let me tell you something. If anybody out there has like, a Shining Force 3 or Shining Force CD that they're, or some really expensive game that they're looking to pawn off, it's like I am happy to trade. 1 roll per game.
I wonder if Game Dude buy that back.
Right, exactly. If I bring this to Game Dude, how much money do you think I can get?
Not used.
Well, but in all seriousness, like, this is actually a very scary thing that you can't find toilet paper everywhere you go. But anyway.
I got him into showers.
Oh boy. And I also hear there's been a surge on bidets. People are buying bidets. But anyway,
I have my own anyway.
Yeah, not video game related, of course, but with the current climate right now, with the coronavirus going on and everything like that, just from the retro gamers, and I'm sure from you as well, Josh, we hope everybody out there stays safe, stays healthy. I don't know about you, Larry. I'm going to be staying indoors a lot for a little while, which is definitely going to mean more gaming for me.
Well, I'm going to have to do some commuting right now, so that's about it. But otherwise, yeah, I was actually supposed to go see King Kong today as of this recording and the big screen. I canceled that, but that was more because the certain movie theater company were being jerks about a refund because my father, who's in his 70s, decided, smart on his part, not to want to go to the movie theater at this point in time. And they're like, nope, sorry, we can't refund just one ticket. Like, you know what? Take them both back. I'm good.
Wow. Yeah, the LA theaters right now, some of the theaters, what they're doing is they're only selling certain seats, and they're like 5 or 6 seats apart.
Yeah. So,
well,
it's wacky. Yeah, Josh.
It's also most theaters right now. I know that AMC and Regal both have issued social distancing. So if a theater is capped at 250 people, they are only selling 125 tickets. So they're only selling half of what the theater can hold.
Yeah, so there's a lot of that going on. But again, there's not necessarily a bright side to these things. Everybody out there needs to stay safe. For us, I know I'm gonna catch up on some games that I've been meaning to finish as part of our 2020 game challenge.
Well, and I got some games as well. We're going to talk about that actually as the hybrid episode continues. But I do want to mention this. Let's talk about some good stuff, which what I did see, which going into this, was worried the topic to talk about was some delays of video game systems because of the virus. But to be fair, with the travel ban and everything that a lot of countries are doing, that ban wasn't really put towards imports and exports as well. But the Polymega, something we've been talking about since probably the inception of this podcast, finally has some major updates because I believe they are back in production because China is starting to come down from all this, and the factories are starting to go back into play.
Yeah.
So here's some information. First of all, neither me or Anthony right now have been picked for the beta for Polymega, but there is a second round of emails to go out. So we may still have a shot
fingers
at this.
Crossed.
Fingers
all
crossed.
The fingers.
This is from the Polymega website. The pre-orders on Walmart and Amazon will go live starting April 15th. So now you can start pre-ordering this from major retailers.
Nice.
Let's see. Retail launch starting on April 15th. The base unit. Wow, we got it at a deal, Ant. The base unit with a wireless controller will go for $400.
Wow.
And the modular sets, NES, SNES, Genesis, and TurboGrafx, will be $80 each.
I'm glad I bought it when I did.
So, and again, they even mentioned with China starting to pick things up again, as long as the situation remains stable for the next 30 to 60 days, they're looking to stage the beta releases March, April, and May. And the street date release is July 6 for all pre-orders. So we're looking at July 6.
Nice.
Worst case scenario.
What a great way to celebrate our Independence Day than picking yourself up a Polymega.
Yes, absolutely. So some good news coming out of this, or at least some happier news as opposed to everyone talking about toilet paper and whatnot being sold out.
Of course, we know that the TurboGrafx Mini has been delayed because of everything going on.
Yes, it has, and I was looking forward to that too, man.
So was I. But look, again, priorities. Things. You know, people. We need
wipe
to make
it down when it comes in the house.
No, we need to make sure everybody stays safe and healthy. Yeah. That's priority.
Well, so with that being said, Josh, do you have anything to add to any of that? You picking up a Polymega?
No, I'm still looking at these cases.
So
those cases are awesome.
No, we
They
know,
are.
we know
Yeah.
Josh is going to go case shopping. Anthony is also going to go case shopping as well. I'll be honest with you.
Let me ask you, because I know Ant has more games. Josh, what games do you have? Like, what cases are you looking for?
I honestly, I know that I need a Sonic game. The first Sonic I need, or either Sonic or Sonic 2, I think it is what one I need. I know I need a Super Terrain, which is the game that you just had featured not that long ago. And I know I have probably one or two more that I need, but they are currently all packed away because my wife and I are getting ready to move.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
That's
Good luck with that.
When is the move officially?
Sometime next month. I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah. All right. Well, we wish you the best with that. Happy packing.
Yes. Yeah, there you go. Shelling out the big bucks.
Yeah, all my entertainment is like 90% of my books, 90% of my movies, all my systems, like it's all packed away right now.
Yeah. Wow. All
Welcome to moving.
Yeah, exactly. I am not looking forward to it if I ever have to do it again. So.
Yeah, right. And I am right now stuck up here, and I'm happy about it.
No, you stay there.
Yes. And all right. So, Ant, did you pick up anything else? Do you have soap? Do you have water?
Well, I mean, I have water because you know what? The sink works just fine. I don't know why everybody was going crazy. Everybody thinks that the water's getting turned off. The water will be fine.
It's LA water.
Yeah. I picked up, well, yeah, that's another story. Yes, I picked up my usual case of water. I have provisions at home. I am pretty sure that I will be safe. If I do start to run out of things, you know what? That's why Grubhub and Postmates are still working. That's why restaurants are still open. Yep. So this is probably, again, and not, I know this is a Retro Gamers, but this is a perfect time to support your local businesses because they're going to need it. So if you, if you do still, if you usually order from certain places, give them a little bit of extra love, for the next few weeks if you can, because, a lot of places are going to be hurting.
And with that, I think World of Warcraft is probably seeing a surge in online gameplay at this point.
Yeah,
this is what we've all prepared for.
The 16-hour-a-day players have now become 22-hour-a-day players.
Yeah.
This is where we're at. We've been training for this. All right, so we're actually, for the Retro Gamers and I guess Victims and Villains, but this is exclusive. Victim Villains ain't hearing any of this. So for the Retro Gamers, we're actually going to come back with part 2 of our Castlevania series review on Netflix season 3. So make sure to check that out next week. And of course, every Friday, you're going to hear classic episodes of the Retro Gamers. The first 28 episodes are going up audio and YouTube, and then 29 through 99 will go up audio on YouTube, so you can check those out. And actually, since we're closing up this week, follow us up on Instagram, on Facebook, on YouTube at Retro Gamers Podcast. Hit us up on Twitter at Retro Gamers Pod. We want to hear from you. And hit them with the website and the email.
Yep, you can check out our website at theretrogamers.com, or you can email us at email@theretrogamers.com.
And since we're wrapping up this week, Josh, please promote your stuff.
All right, you guys can follow us everywhere: social media, suicide prevention resources, episodes, reviews, contact upcoming events, and more at victimsandvillains.net.
Awesome. And with that, we will catch you for part 2 right here next week on the Retro Gamers Podcast.